How you doing, everybody? It's Kevin Noon here on the College Football Playbook podcast. No, I'm not at my normal spot of the Big Me Kickoff. I am filling in here right now. It is July 1st, and if you don't have a program, you may not know where your favorite team is. Now, of course, if you're a blue blood like Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or teams like that, you know what conference your team is in, or what conference your team is in. I had to think about that one for a second. But for 14 teams, July 1 marked moving day as the Big 12, American, and Conference USA all welcome new members. Now, as we know, there's a lot more talk right now about what is going to happen in 2024 with Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC, USC and UCLA moving to the Big 10. Those things that we know. We don't know what's going to happen with somebody like a San Diego State. We don't know what's going to happen with Colorado at this point, as it's been flirtatious. Everybody's waiting to see what the Pac-12 media rights deal is going to be. And until we know that, we don't know what other type of movement is going on. But completely independent of all that are the moves that were made official here today on July 1st. And for those that have been following along, you already know these. You know that your team has moved, but not everybody has been staying up on this. We are in July. We're still a couple months away from the start of the season. But going to the Big 12, UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati. Going to the American, Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA. And going to Conference USA, Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston, or Sam Houston State, depending on what the branding is. I've seen it both ways there. Their logo doesn't have state in it anymore, but it's old habits are going to die hard, and I've always known them as Sam Houston State, so I'll probably call them Sam Houston State for a while. You know, I never had an issue with Memphis and calling Memphis State, but, you know, it's just how things work out. Now, of course, the question is going to be, how are these new teams going to fare in their new conferences? And the answer is, well, we don't know. If we knew, we would be placing giant bets right now and just dreaming of ways to spend the money. But what we can do is we can look back at last year and what their records were in their previous stops and try and extrapolate a little. And maybe down the line, we will do something a little bit more in depth. This is just meant to be a 10-minute show just to kind of accompany a copy, a piece of copy that I wrote, and just to get everybody, wet their beaks a little bit, get them interested in what's going on there. But let's start with the new members of the Big 12, a Big 12 that is going to be in its configuration for 1 year and 1 year only. As I said at the top of the show, Texas and Oklahoma are moving in 2024. It's 2023, so 4 new teams in. The 2 departing teams have not departed yet, so the Big 12 is a big old party right now. Let's start with BYU, who was 7-6 last year as an independent. Now, that's probably the team that I know the least about at this point because they do play an independent schedule. I don't really watch a lot of crossover film on the Cougars of what they do. So, that's going to be the one that's going to be interesting. I think all of these teams that go into a conference are going to be in for a little bit of a surprise, and in the fact of all these other teams have been scouting each other for all of these years. And I guarantee you everybody in the Big 12 has been watching and is not like all of a sudden woke up on July 1st and said, whoa, what happened here? Why are these teams now in our conference? They've probably been scouting them just as these teams have been scouting the Big 12. But generally, you don't go into a conference and then suddenly start to run that stuff. Talk to Miami, Florida, who has not been able to win an ACC championship when they joined the ACC. Probably thought that they were going to be able to do some things there. Penn State certainly came into the Big 10 thinking, hey, we got a chance to run this. Very few Big 10 titles going to the Nittany Lions. Nebraska's Nebraska. They've been down a little bit regardless prior to going to the Big 10. You have to go back to the Big 8 days to when the Huskers really had a lot of success. So, it'll be interesting to see. And then we have the 3 teams coming over from the American. We have UCF that was 9-5 overall, 6-2 in the AAC. Cincinnati that was 9-4 overall, 6-2 in the ACC. And then Houston, who was 8-5, 5-3 in the ACC. And we certainly saw some great battles through the years between UC and Houston. Obviously, last year, the magical run of Tulane was the story in the American, and we didn't talk as much about UCF and Houston and UC. Um, but obviously, UC has got the issue of Luke Fickell's now in Madison, Wisconsin, as the Badgers head coach. So they are going to have to break in a new coach, and there's always going to be some growing pains when that happens. UCF certainly seems to be set up, in my opinion, for the most immediate success. And then, of course, you have Houston, another team out of the great state of Texas, who will Houston be able to leverage this for its recruiting? Will it be able to recruit a little bit better in its home state now that it is going to be a member of the Big 12? It is not going to be carrying the same weight as a Texas or an Oklahoma, obviously, but now you have to figure it's got to be on somewhat of equal footing in terms of prestige with Baylor and Texas Tech, right? And I guess I should have said Texas A&M rather than Oklahoma. You're going to be on that equal footing. You're all going to be in the same conference, so there's got to be something to that. So I think recruiting is going to be very important for all three of these programs. It's important for everybody, but it's going to be really important for these programs. Is UCF now stepping into a Power 5 conference going to be able to keep more players in the state of Florida? I mean, UCF does land some guys here and there. They've been pretty active in the transfer portal. Will that raise their profile? Will Cincinnati be able to out-recruit the Big Ten and Kentucky in the state of Ohio for players that maybe don't get picked by Ohio State? And then, of course, with Houston, as I had mentioned, will that put them on a more equal footing with Tech and Baylor and some programs of that stature? So now, we have those teams moving in, leaving vacancies in the American. Well, the American loses 3 and gains 6. And all of them are coming over from Conference USA with Charlotte, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA. And we certainly have kind of a range of how all these teams did in 2022, with UTSA going 11-3, 8-0 in Conference USA. North Texas was 7-7, 6-2. And then everybody else was 500 in the league or worse, with FAU at 4-4, with UAB at 4-4. Then you had Rice at 3-5, and then Charlotte at 2-6. And Charlotte is still trying to get its footing as a member of FBS football. The football program there is relatively new. They got into FCS, and it seems like they pushed too quickly to get into FBS, and they just haven't necessarily been able to put it together yet. Been a lot of turnover in terms of where things are. They're not going to be able to. The state of North Carolina turns out a lot of talent, just with the population shifts and everything else. The state has a lot of talent, but that talent is not going to Charlotte at this point. You certainly have Clemson in the state of South Carolina, along with the Gamecocks, both recruiting well there. Georgia, Ohio State recruits there. I mean, of course, you have the in-state schools like UNC and NC State. And, of course, Duke has a football program, but we don't talk about them all that much. It's going to be a big hill to climb. But Appalachian State is also in the state of North Carolina, and it made the move up from FCS to FBS and has certainly had more success. But, there was a structure in place a lot longer for App State than there was for Charlotte, or there is for Charlotte at this point. So I think that one's going to be tough. FAU, we can look at them again, just yet another program in the state of Florida. There are going to be more kids in Florida than the major programs can take. FAU, when Lane Kiffin was there prior to Ole Miss, did a really good job through the portal. I think FAU is somebody that you could bet long on. I don't think that you're going to see something immediate with the Owls, but we'll see. North Texas and Denton, Texas, north of Dallas, home of singer Norah Jones and the musical group Bowling for Soup, for those that like a little trivia. I've certainly had beers in Denton in the time that I lived in Dallas. Um, Again, another case of you're moving up from CUSA to the American. The American wants to remind everybody, Power Six, Power Six. There's not a Power Five, it's a Power Six. And with the 12-team playoff coming on, if you're one of the top six conferences champions, you're in. So there's a lot of opportunity there for the winner of the American for inclusion. Now, are you going to be able to win it all? Well, I don't know, but if you're in the top six, you're getting a home game. If you're in the top, you're getting a bye. But even if you're not, you're getting a home game in that first round. And now I'm not saying that a winner of an American game is necessarily going to be able to beat the number 2 SEC team, Big Ten team, what have you. But it certainly is interesting to think about. So North Texas has got a lot of opportunity. Rice is in the state of Texas as well, outside of Houston, and smallest Division I FBS school. I think that there are a lot of challenges there just for the sheer fact of the academic rigors of Rice and just some of the issues that you're going to deal there. But now you're on a little bit better footing of being at least in, while, Power 6 may not really be Power 5. I mean, it does add a little bit more legitimacy. UTSA, again, San Antonio is not necessarily a part of the state that churns out a ton of talent in terms of football. But with it having such a huge military presence, and you've got a lot of military brats that go through there, you just never know what's going to be in that area. And again, top kids are going to go to top schools, but you should still be able to recruit pretty well. And they had a wonderful year. The Roadrunners, as I said, went 11-3 and 8-0. And then you have UAB, a team that seems to poke its head up every few years, has a good run, has some good players there that lead to some wins, then has some years where it's kind of in the middle or maybe a little below middle. But I'm really interested to see how the American looks in 3 years, 4 years, once these teams have had a chance to run multiple classes as members of the American Athletic Conference. What do these teams look like? How do they fare against teams that have already been in the American for years? If you're here to tell me that all 6 of those teams are going to sit there and lose yearly to Temple, I don't believe you. I think that they may lose to Temple year 1, but I don't think that it's going to be something that is going to be a perennial issue. So I will be very interested in that. And then we get into Conference USA, and they kind of go all over the board with the 4 additions that they have. We'll start with Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks. So South Carolina is not the only team with that mascot of the Gamecocks. They were 9-2, 5-0 in the Atlantic Sun. Liberty went as an independent last year and was 8-5. Obviously, Hugh Freeze is there, so that'll be interesting. He knows how to recruit. New Mexico State was 7-6 as an independent last year. And then you have Sam Houston State stepping up in classification, 5-4 in the WAC, which was FCS last year. So once again, you've got a lot of movement there. 14 teams on the move, 6 to the Big 12, or 4 to the Big 12, 6 to the American, and 4 to Conference USA. And with all of that, I think that the vast majority of college football wants to talk about 24 and beyond, and whether or not a media rights deal is going to come in place for the Pac-12. Is that going to force Colorado to look elsewhere? What does that mean for the corner schools with Arizona and Arizona State and Utah? What's up with Oregon and Washington? I mean, they certainly have shown interest in wanting to go to the Big Ten. The Big Ten doesn't necessarily want to be the one that breaks up the Pac-12. Well, spoiler alert, you took USC and UCLA. That kind of put the Pac-12 down a few rungs. And it wasn't like that they were on a top rung of the ladder anyway. So a lot could happen here. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, just more of a news informational type of show. We're going to go about 15 minutes, it appears. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Hit that thumbs up. Show us that you like us. The subscription to the channel, all of that helps us with the algorithm, helps us with YouTube, gets us more distribution as we continue to grow this channel. We got some big things in the offing. I promise you, we got some big things coming here, more regularity with content and everything else. If you're listening to us on one of your favorite podcasting platforms, write us a 5-star review, even if it just says Noon Rocks. That will help us with our distribution on that side of things and get us out to more people. And just be sure not to miss a single thing. But until the next time we hit the air, thanks for watching or listening wherever you may be, and have a wonderful weekend and a safe and healthy and happy 4th of July.